morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio. So today, it's time to take a little bit of a look at a new deck, which is actually doing really, really well over in Japan. And it's a deck that we didn't really see coming. And incidentally, and I know this means a lot to a whole bunch of you, it's not a huge problem playing it post-rotation. This was in a slightly different format in Japan, but it's really not a huge problem playing it over here. So what kind of a deck is it? Well, it all revolves around, and stop me if this sounds a bit weird, because it should, because it is, the new Alolan Sandslash. The Alolan Sandslash GX. And no, I didn't think that was going to be a particularly good card either. Now, we all knew it had a little bit of potential, don't get me wrong, but did we see it as a, oh my god, this is going to be just one of the best decks in the format, potentially? No! No, we didn't. Well, ladies and gentlemen, might be time to readjust our thinking. Now, the ability here is quite nice. If it's your active Pokemon and is damaged by an attack, even if it's knocked out, you put 3 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. That's alright, that's all well and good, that's fine. But free energy 120 is alright. Again, it's not great. It's not even enough to get a one-hit KO on a Reshiram and Charizard, but please do remember, you've already noticed from the ability, and believe me, there's plenty more, there will be a bunch of cheeky damage to make sure we get over the numbers here. And then we've got, for the same energy cost, the GX attack, 100 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon with damage on them. So our goal here seems to be get a bunch of damage on the board, and then use the GX attack to wreck face. Okay, sounds like fun. So how are we going to get damage out? And the answer is, we are going to do it with wheezing, and coughing, and Roxie. We should start with Roxie. Roxie is a new supporter card which is coming out in Cosmic Eclipse. And what it does is you may discard 2 Pokemon from your hand, and you draw 3 cards for each Pokemon discarded. But then we've got coughing here, and every time you discard coughing using Roxie, you get to do 1 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon. That sounds pretty good. What does wheezing do? Wheezing does exactly the same thing. Like, it literally has exactly the same ability, whereby if it is discarded using Roxie, you do 1 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon. So the goal here, very simply, is that you're doing 2 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon using coughing and wheezing. You're doing 3 damage to anything that attacks Alolan Sandslash, and yes, fine, you'll lose an Alolan Sandslash or 2, but you don't really mind. The goal here is to just put damage on everything, and then when you've put damage on everything, you can then just do 100 to everything with your GX attack, and hopefully that will just close out the game, frankly. Sounds like fun, looks like fun, is fun. Now, there are a couple of other Pokemon we are using to get our strategy off. Stop me if you've heard this one before. We use the Jirachi from Team Up. Yeah, it's not the most interesting one ever at this stage. Every deck plays it. It's not every deck, you know what I mean, I'm exaggerating. But it is a phenomenal card. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck. If it's in the active, find a trainer card, put it in your hand, you go to sleep. But of course, you will be playing Escape Board here so that you can retreat it for free, even if it is asleep. Sounds like fun. Now, this deck does tend to play Tapu Lele, but you could easily just replace it with Dedenne. You wouldn't be losing very much, so I don't think it's a huge problem. Yes, searching out Roxie's big, but I don't think it's killing the deck bad that we're losing it. We play 1 Marshadow here, just gets rid of stadiums. It's actually pretty good if you happen to be attacking an Ultra Beast. It's quite nice. But really, it's for getting rid of stadiums, probably Power Plant mostly, because of course Power Plant will turn off Alolan Sandslash's ability. That is a bad thing. But speaking of turning off abilities, we play one of the new Mimikyu here. This is the Mimikyu that just came out in Tag All-Stars over in Japan. And it's the one that has an ability whereby any Pokemon GX that has damage counters on has no ability. Oh. Yeah, that's pretty good, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be honest with you, right? That's pretty good. That is going to turn off all the abilities of all of your opponents' Pokemon, the GXs at least. Because remember, with stuff like coughing and wheezing, you are just putting a damage counter on all of them. That's not a problem. And that means that they're losing all of their abilities. Now, that will include you if you've got any damage counters on, but they attack you once, they take the damage. That's the main thing here. That's the goal. And honestly, that's the Pokemon line. If you want to throw in some spicy techs, maybe you want to go for, one of the wheezing from Unbroken Bonds that drops 1 damage on each of your opponent's basic Pokemon between turns. Not sure if it's the best option for a deck like this, but you're playing coughing anyway. One thing that worries me a bit with this deck, if you start with a coughing, you can't actually discard it to get the effect of Roxie, which makes me think, well, while it's out there anyway, we might as well try and get a little bit of extra benefit from it. That could be fun. Now, in terms of our energy here, there is a slight issue in that this deck does love double colorless energy, but as we move into the trainer cards, might I remind you about red and blue, which is played in this deck, and we could just play a little bit more. Lets you search your deck for a Pokemon that evolves, a GX that evolves one of your Pokemon on the board, and then if you discard some cards from your hand, how many? Fine. It's 2. You can search your deck for a couple of basic energy and attach them while doing so. So you know what? That seems good to me. That seems incredibly helpful. That's going to help you out quite a lot. So we like red and blue is going to help us out with one of the biggest problems we've actually got in the deck. Now, as with so many decks lately over in Japan, we are actually playing multiple tag team supporter cards here. We are also playing Cynthia and Caitlin. Grabs a supporter card from your discard pile into your hand, and if you discard a card from your hand, you also get to draw 3 cards. That's quite nice. And I love Misty and Lorelei here. And Misty and Lorelei is extremely important for this deck being good and valid. Because you search your deck for 3 basic water energy, put them in your hand, blah, 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 no one really cares. But if you discard 5 cards from your hand, you can use a water Pokemon's GX attack, even if you've used your GX attack this game. Well, look, Alolan Sandslash is a water Pokemon. That means that you can use your GX attack again. Beyond wonderful. Because, of course, just spreading 100 might not be enough. But spreading 100 2 or maybe even 3 times along with the rest of the cheeky damage, that'll do, pig. That'll do. And outside of that, it's a lot of what we would expect. We've got Professor Realm's Lecture to help us get our Pokemon out in the early game. We see stuff like Lily and maybe even Lieutenant Surge. Lieutenant Surge could be a bit more important in this deck, given that Roxie is very important and red and blue is very important, so you might wish to play with that. You can also use Mysterious Treasure here quite nicely, because it will search out your coughing and your wheezing, as well as Cherish Ball to search out your GX. I do understand that we are losing a couple of other useful cards, but we've got 2 deck lists here and they don't actually agree. So, yes, they both play Aqua Patch. That is a big loss, but like I've said, red and blue can cover it. And one of them plays Brooklet Hill to help get your basics out, but the other one doesn't play Brooklet Hill. So it's clearly not that big of a loss. Yeah, you lose Ultra Ball, but every deck's lost it, so I think it's get over it time. I do lament that we don't have double colorless energy, and I am a little bit sad that we don't have Aqua Patch. But they're really the 2 cards I'm worried about, and we do have other options here. Here is the first deck list, the one that we've mostly focused on in this video. And it's pretty much like we've said, the 2 Aqua Patch make me sad and a double colorless energy. Here is the other deck list. It's largely the same. We're kind of similar here, if I'm honest with you. And I like them. I like this deck. I think it's a good deck. And I think it's one with a lot of potential. Being able to use Misty and Lorelei to be able to reuse your GX attack in a spreading deck of this magnitude really is pretty awesome. And it's fun, and it's different, and I love it. But I'd like to know what you think about this deck, ladies and gentlemen, so please do let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassyPlays, where we talk about a whole bunch of games that don't even have any Pokemon in. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.